Does not help. Lorraine turned on him. You told me Naomi only used it for security outside. I told you it covered the back entrance. The dining room is in the same view. Their alliance had begun to fray. Each answer transferred a little responsibility to the other. Lorraine's brother asked why I had been paying $6,000 each month. He believed Caleb and I paid ordinary rent. I opened the folder and placed a summary of payments on the table. Over 34 months, I had transferred $204,000, not including groceries, repairs, or gifts. Denise read the total twice. That cannot all be rent. It covered the mortgage, property taxes, utilities, groceries, cleaning, and maintenance, I said. Lorraine's face hardened. You offered. I did. The fact that I offered does not make it less true. Then why display it now? Generosity that demands applause is not generosity. I am not asking for applause. I am correcting the claim that you supported us. Rebecca slid one of the old messages toward their aunt. It showed Lorraine demanding $12,000 and refusing to produce the alleged tax notice. Denise looked from the screen to her sister. You told us Rebecca stopped helping after your surgery. She did. This was before the surgery. Lorraine's voice rose. I will not sit here while my daughters coordinate a trial against me. The word daughters struck both Rebecca and me differently. Rebecca laughed without humor. I felt the old pull to rescue the relationship hidden inside the manipulation. You called us daughters when you wanted daughter-sized sacrifices, Rebecca said. The moment we said no, we became enemies. Caleb asked everyone to lower their voices. Rebecca turned toward him. You sent me the same sentence you sent Naomi. Pay now, set boundaries later. Did later ever arrive for you? This is not about what happened 10 years ago. It is about the system you kept calling peace. Lorraine pushed back from the table. Your brother stayed when you abandoned me. He stayed because you made staying profitable. Caleb stood. That is enough. For the first time, his anger faced Rebecca instead of folding inward. You left me alone with her and then criticized every way I survived. Rebecca's face softened, which seemed to anger him more. I was 25, she said. I asked you to come with me. You told me good sons do not leave. Some of us could not walk away, whenever family became inconvenient. I heard my own history in his accusation. He still interpreted leaving harm as abandoning the person causing it. Lorraine seized the opening. Caleb understands loyalty. He looked at her. Do not. I am defending you. You told Naomi you needed shopping money. You did not tell her about the account. The room went still. Lorraine stared at him. Your lawyer told you not to discuss finances. My lawyer told me not to lie. His counsel intervened, but the damage to their shared story had already occurred. Lorraine accused Caleb of placing her name on an account she barely understood. Caleb said she had used the card repeatedly and knew why the minimum payment mattered. Lorraine claimed she believed he would reimburse everything from legitimate bonuses. Caleb reminded her of the message promising to handle me. They did not confess cleanly. They blamed each other in fragments, each revealing enough to protect a separate self-image. I watched without satisfaction. For weeks, I had imagined the relief of seeing them turn against one another. In reality, it looked like two frightened people discovering that shared concealment was not the same as loyalty. Denise asked Lorraine why she picked up the bat. Lorraine pressed both hands against the table. Because she threatened to cut me off and take my son away. I was scared. You were holding a weapon, I said. I was trying to leave. You had all the power. Financial power is not permission to hit me, and paying your bills did not make me responsible for your fear of losing the payments. Lorraine began to cry. Her tears were real. That was what made them difficult. Manipulative people do not always manufacture emotion. Sometimes they use genuine pain as proof that nobody else is allowed to have any. I treated you like my own child, she said. That is no longer comforting. The sentence ended the meeting more effectively than shouting could have. I stood slowly. Lorraine reached across the table, not quite touching me. "Sit down. We have not decided anything. There is nothing this table gets to decide for me." I walked out with Rebecca beside me. Behind us, Lorraine demanded that Caleb explain what he had told his lawyer. He accused her of making everything worse. Denise began gathering the financial summaries. Nobody remained seated according to Lorraine's preferred arrangement. When I looked back through the front window, Lorraine was alone at the head of the table, while the others stood in separate corners of the room. Outside, Rebecca asked whether returning had helped. "It showed me the room was never the source of her power," I said. "We were." The complete financial report arrived 2 days later. Marcus and an independent forensic accountant separated every transaction into confirmed business expense, documentation failure, personal misuse, or unresolved item. The final confirmed personal misuse attributed to Caleb remained $76,400. Lorraine had benefited from $21,600 of that amount through payments, card purchases, and cash access. The remaining misuse covered Caleb's travel, unrelated to work, personal debts, and transfers intended to conceal his speculative losses. The losses themselves exceeded $130,000, most taken initially from Caleb's personal savings and a retirement account he had liquidated without telling me. He had not directly stolen that full amount from the company. Precision mattered. The company claim concerned the fund's records could prove he misused, not every foolish financial choice he had made. The review found no evidence that hospital clients, clinician payroll, or employee benefits had lost money. That fact brought enormous relief. Caleb had exploited expense flexibility, but he had not disrupted wages or patient staffing. We notified the appropriate insurer, corrected filings where necessary, and introduced dual approval for emergency reimbursements above a lower threshold. I addressed the senior team in person once my doctor allowed me to return to the office for limited hours. I wore a jacket that concealed most of the remaining bruising, then removed it before the meeting, because hiding the sling required more energy than acknowledging it. "A trusted executive misused company processes," I told them. "He was also my husband. Those facts made the failure more difficult to recognize, not less important to correct. We have preserved records, engaged independent review, and strengthened controls. No employee payroll or client funds were affected." Nobody asked for private details. My deputy presented the new workflow. Marcus explained reporting channels. The meeting lasted 38 minutes. Afterward, a scheduling coordinator named Alina, not Detective Ruiz, but a young mother who had worked with us for 2 years, waited near the conference room door. "I am sorry," she said. "Not about the company, about whatever made you look at that sling like you had to apologize for it." Her words stayed with me. The company stabilized because systems did not need everyone to feel comfortable before they could function. I began wondering why I had expected less accountability from a marriage than from an institution. Caleb's termination became final after the review. His attorney negotiated access to personal possessions and copies of records relevant to his defense, but his company credentials remained disabled. He no longer entered the office through the private door beside mine. His name disappeared from the leadership page. Employees who had once treated us as a founding couple learned that the company existed before his title and could exist after it. The professional loss wounded his pride more deeply than the suspension had. He sent a letter through counsel describing years of unpaid emotional support during the company's beginning. He argued that I had benefited from his presence even if his legal ownership was zero. I did not deny that he had supported me. I remembered the meals at the folding desks and the nights he helped answer calls. Those contributions belonged to our shared history. They did not purchase permission to misuse company funds later. My attorney helped me separate appreciation from debt. Marriage had made some assets subject to ordinary legal division, and we would follow that process. It did not make every company account a private wallet. Lorraine's public campaign intensified when the financial review became known within the family. She posted a long message about elder abuse through financial control. She did not name me, but she described a wealthy relative who had promised lifetime support, moved into a widow's house, installed surveillance, and abruptly cut off necessities after provoking a confrontation. Several people recognized the story. Some supported her. Others asked questions she could not answer, especially why a person receiving $6,000 monthly needed company-funded card payments. I issued no public rebuttal. My attorney preserved the post. Detective Ruiz advised me to continue observing the contact restrictions. The discipline felt unbearable for 2 days, then freeing. Lorraine could spend every morning inventing me. I did not have to attend. Her version weakened when Denise corrected relatives privately. Rebecca also refused interviews, but told family members she had experienced similar demands. Nobody released the assault video publicly. We did not need to humiliate Lorraine for entertainment. Its legal value remained intact, and those whose opinions mattered could wait for evidence. The assault case advanced through ordinary stages. Lorraine was formally charged based on the recording, medical documentation, physical evidence, and statements. Her lawyer challenged aspects of the recording and emphasized her age, fear, and lack of prior conviction. The court did not become a theater where one dramatic speech decided everything. Dates were scheduled, motions filed, and conditions reviewed. Each delay frustrated me. I wanted an official sentence explaining what happened. Priya reminded me that I already possessed the truth, even while institutions processed it. The civil and company matters moved separately. Our insurer pursued part of the loss. The company asserted restitution claims. Caleb's counsel examined whether specific charges had been implicitly authorized through past practice. Marcus answered with documents instead of outrage. 1 month after the assault, Caleb proposed a comprehensive private settlement. He would acknowledge the unauthorized spending, cooperate with restitution, separate his finances from Lorraine, and enter counseling. In exchange, he wanted the company to avoid further civil escalation where legally possible, and he wanted me to support a resolution that kept the assault video private. He also wanted us to postpone divorce for 6 months. The proposal did not demand that I lie. It was more sophisticated than that. It offered immediate financial clarity, reduced legal expense, and a controlled public narrative. It was the kind of compromise I might once have praised as mature. My attorney explained each provision without advising me whether to preserve the marriage. Marcus said repayment would be easier with cooperation. Priya asked what silence would cost me. The video is already private, I said. I have never wanted to publish it. Then what is he buying? The answer was my future agreement to describe what happened as a family crisis we had resolved together. Caleb wanted cooperation to become evidence that his choices had not permanently changed who we were. I requested one revision. No condition would require me to minimize violence, conceal verified company misconduct, discourage lawful investigation, or present reconciliation as part of the resolution. Caleb could cooperate, repay, and seek treatment without purchasing my silence or delaying my marital decision. His lawyer returned a narrower proposal. Caleb would cooperate financially if I agreed not to make disparaging public statements. My attorney replaced that term with a mutual commitment limited to knowingly false statements. Truth would not be defined as disparagement. Lorraine refused to participate in any agreement acknowledging intentional harm. She offered to pay my medical expenses if I signed a statement that the strike occurred during mutual escalation. I declined. Denise called me afterward. Your refusal may force Lorraine to sell the house. My refusal to sign a false statement does not control whether she sells her house. Without your monthly payment, she cannot maintain it. That was true before she hit me. Nobody told me because they needed the payment to feel permanent. She is still Caleb's mother. And I am still the person she struck. Denise sighed. I am trying to keep the family from splitting forever. Then ask the people who broke it what they are willing to tell the truth about. I ended the call kindly. Kindness no longer required continuing the conversation until Denise felt satisfied. During that period, I moved into the townhouse. It was not finished. One bedroom had flooring and paint. The kitchen worked, though half the cabinet doors were missing. Drop cloths covered the living room floor, and the stair rail remained wrapped in protective paper. My father hired a different contractor after reviewing the remaining work with me. Every decision came with a date, price, and person responsible. The first night, Priya stocked the refrigerator. Rebecca mailed a lamp because the bedroom fixture flickered. My father assembled a chair badly and refused to admit one leg was shorter than the others. When everyone left, the house became painfully quiet. Freedom did not sound like music. It sounded like pipes settling inside walls and my own breathing in a room where nobody else could hear it. I missed Caleb with an ache that embarrassed me. I missed his footsteps, his habit of leaving cabinet doors open, and the private jokes that had existed alongside the deception. I sat on the bedroom floor because the bed frame had not arrived. For 20 minutes, I considered calling him. Then I asked myself what I wanted from the call. I wanted him to become the person I had believed he was and tell me the last month had been an aberration. No conversation could do that. Calling would only ask him to relieve pain his choices had created. I called Priya instead and told her I missed my husband. "Of course you do," she said. She did not list his failures or convert my grief into disloyalty toward myself. She stayed on the phone until I could sleep. Counseling taught me to distinguish grief from instruction. Missing Caleb was a feeling. It was not an order to return. Guilt was a feeling. It was not evidence that my boundary was wrong. Lorraine had trained the family to treat her distress as a command. I had internalized the same system and applied it to every painful emotion. The townhouse changed slowly. Floors were completed. Doors were hung. I chose paint without imagining Lorraine's judgment. The brass key moved from my clenched fist to a hook beside the entrance. One Saturday, Rebecca visited Fairhaven with her husband and 2 children. The children raced through the unfinished living room and argued over which bedroom should become a guest room. Rebecca stood by the kitchen window. "Caleb used to draw houses when we were young," she said. "He always put Mom's room in the center." Did he know what he wanted outside her? I do not think anyone ever asked him. Her compassion for him did not weaken her boundaries. She had learned to hold both. We spoke about the warning she gave me years earlier. "Be careful what you make normal," I repeated. I wanted to say more. "Why didn't you?" Because if I had attacked Mom directly, Caleb would have used my anger to dismiss me. And because I was afraid you would tell her. I admitted I probably would have. I had reported small comments to Caleb hoping he would mediate, and he often carried them to Lorraine in softened but recognizable form. The family system survived by making privacy seem suspicious. Rebecca and I did not become instant sisters. Trust grew through modest acts. She sent evidence when asked. I did not pressure her to attend proceedings. She called without demanding updates. We learned a relationship could develop without one person becoming responsible for the other's emotional stability. Caleb entered counseling and sent monthly restitution payments through the negotiated company process. Cooperation reduced certain disputes but did not restore trust. His letters changed over time. The first explained Lorraine. The second explained financial panic. The third described shame. Only the fourth contained a sentence without a defense. "I watched you ask for help, and I chose the person holding the bat." I cried after reading it. Recognition mattered. It did not reverse the choice. My divorce petition was ready. I delayed signing for 1 week, not because Caleb requested it, but because I wanted to know whether I was acting from shock or a settled understanding. During that week, I reread no family messages. I reviewed the facts I already possessed. Caleb had concealed losses for nearly a year. He had used company access repeatedly. He had coordinated with Lorraine. He had watched the bat rise. He had moved aside. He had discouraged help. He had begun negotiating the truth before sunrise. The pattern was not a single terrible minute. I signed. Caleb requested one final substantive meeting before responding. We arranged it at a neutral mediation office. No one expected reconciliation to occur there, but he wanted to speak as my husband before legal positions consumed every sentence. He arrived early. I wore the coat Lorraine had once criticized because I bought it only for myself. My shoulder had healed enough that I no longer needed a sling. Caleb looked at the petition on the table. 6 years deserves more than signatures. That is why I came. He described his counseling. He said he had moved into a small apartment rather than returning permanently to Lorraine's house. He had blocked access to the card account and given his lawyer records without waiting for subpoenas. He promised never to speak to his mother again if that was what I needed. I do not want you to abandon her for me, I said. I thought that was the choice you needed me to make. I needed you to stop her from hitting me. I needed you to tell me the truth before I discovered it in an audit. Cutting her off now does not recreate those moments. People change after they understand what they did. Yes. Then why is change not enough? Because growth does not obligate the person you harmed to restore your access. He pressed both palms against the table. I was raised inside this. You knew she controlled me. I knew you were uncomfortable opposing her. I did not know you would spend company money and leave me in front of a weapon. I never thought she would swing. You saw her raise it. He whispered, 4 seconds. He had watched the video enough to know the measure. 4 seconds during the assault, I said. Months during the finances, years delaying our move. 11 calls afterward without asking if I was safe. Which part should I treat as the one mistake? His face folded. None of it. For the first time, he did not ask me to make his answer less painful. He told me that after the police came, Lorraine blamed him for failing to delete the recording. She had assumed his company position gave him control over every system I used. When he explained he could not access my administrator account, she called him useless. Their alliance deteriorated further when attorneys separated their interests. I spent my life protecting her, he said. The first time protection failed, she treated me like an enemy. I am sorry. He looked surprised by my compassion. But that does not make me your next protection system, I continued. He nodded. We spoke about the beginning of my company. I thanked him for the dinners, the calls, and the genuine encouragement. He admitted he had gradually converted those memories into a belief that he owned whatever I built. I was proud of you, he said. Then I started needing your success to prove I mattered. Every time you solved something I could not, I told myself I deserved compensation for feeling smaller. It was the most honest explanation he ever gave me. I slid the petition toward him. I hope you become someone who never does this again. Just not with you. Not with me. He signed an acknowledgement of service before we left. At the elevator, he asked whether I had moved into the townhouse. Yes. Is the kitchen finished? Almost. He smiled sadly. It should have been our home. It should have been a decision we made 3 years ago. The elevator doors closed between us. I cried in the parking garage until my ribs hurt again, but I did not regret the petition. The week after that meeting forced me to confront a consequence I had underestimated. Ending a marriage did not end the habits the marriage had created. I still woke at 6 and reached toward Caleb's side of the bed before remembering I slept alone. I still saw articles he would enjoy and nearly sent them. At the grocery store, I placed his preferred coffee in my cart, noticed what I had done, and stood between the shelves holding a bag that suddenly felt heavier than it was. I bought the coffee. Throwing it back would not prove independence. At home, I gave it to my father. Counseling helped me examine why ordinary tenderness seemed to contradict the evidence. I had expected betrayal to erase every loving memory and make separation emotionally simple. Instead, love and harm occupied the same history. Caleb had encouraged my company when success was uncertain. He had also come to resent and exploit that success. He had comforted me through grief. He had also used knowledge of my grief to anticipate when I would surrender. Human beings did not become consistent merely because a legal case required clear categories. You do not have to decide that every good moment was false. my counselor said. You only have to decide what the complete pattern permits now. The complete pattern permitted compassion at a distance. It did not permit access. Caleb tested that distinction indirectly. He began sending practical questions through counsel that carried emotional invitations beneath them. Did I want the blue bowl? Had I renewed the car registration? Should he cancel the streaming account we shared? Did I remember the password to the photo archive from our first trip? We answered practical questions practically. My attorney transferred personal communication to a structured application used during separation. Messages remained limited to property, finances, and legal scheduling. The format felt severe until I recognized how often Caleb had used unfinished logistics to keep conversations open. One evening, he uploaded hundreds of photographs to the shared archive. The first showed us painting the original office. Another showed Lorraine smiling between us at our wedding. In a third, Rebecca stood at the edge of a family Christmas photograph, half turned toward the door. I downloaded what I wanted and closed the archive. Memory did not require an active relationship. At Mercer Clinical Solutions, the independent review uncovered a second vulnerability unrelated to Caleb's personal misuse. Several managers had been sharing approval credentials during overnight emergencies because the official system was too slow. No money had been stolen through that practice, but the habit could have hidden future misconduct. The discovery embarrassed me. I wanted Caleb to be the isolated failure so that removing him would solve everything. Good governance required a less flattering truth. Systems often invite shortcuts before dishonest people exploit them. We interviewed night shift coordinators and redesigned emergency authorization. Instead of one person's reusable credentials, 2 on-call managers could approve through time-limited verification. Every exception generated a next-day review. Employees received training without being treated as suspects. Marcus watched me reject an overly restrictive proposal from the consultants. You are not trying to make trust impossible, he said. I am trying to stop calling trust a substitute for structure. That became the governing lesson at work and at home. The board requested a formal account of my delay after Marcus first raised concerns. I could have described Caleb's manipulation and the assault, but neither removed my professional responsibility. I told them I had allowed marital trust to influence an oversight decision. I had postponed the review until month-end without sufficient documentation. The board recorded the failure, accepted the corrective plan, and required expanded independent monitoring for a year. Walking out of that meeting, I felt lighter. Accountability given voluntarily did not resemble Lorraine's forced shame. I could admit where I had failed without accepting responsibility for Caleb's decisions. The company later promoted my deputy director, Simone Grant, to chief operating officer. She had worked with us for 5 years and possessed the experience Caleb's title had obscured. During salary negotiations, she asked whether I was promoting her because I felt guilty. I am promoting you because you have already been performing the work, I said. My guilt is not part of your compensation. She smiled. Good answer. Simone introduced monthly open office sessions where employees could raise process concerns without their direct supervisors. The first session produced small issues, mileage delays, an unreliable scheduling application, inconsistent hotel standards. Nothing sounded dramatic. That was the point. Healthy systems did not require danger before people were allowed to speak. Lorraine's community system operated differently. Her church committee scheduled a support luncheon for her after she described herself as a widow facing displacement. The event flyer asked for donations toward legal and housing expenses. Denise forwarded it to Rebecca, who forwarded it to me with no comment. I stared at Lorraine's smiling photograph above the words, "Family should never be conditional." The phrase was powerful because it omitted whose conditions had governed the family for years. My attorney said the fundraiser did not violate the protective conditions as long as Lorraine did not contact or defame me unlawfully. I chose not to interfere. People were free to help her. My boundary did not require everyone else to withdraw care. The luncheon raised enough to cover several legal bills, but nowhere near the cost of maintaining the colonial. More importantly, questions emerged. A church treasurer asked why Lorraine's mortgage was so high and why no long-term budget existed after years of support. Lorraine refused to provide details and accused the committee of humiliating her. 2 members withdrew from organizing future fundraisers. Others continued visiting. Her community did not abandon her uniformly, nor did it accept every claim. The grayness frustrated Lorraine because she understood relationships through total allegiance. One of her closest friends, Marjorie, contacted me privately. She apologized for sharing Lorraine's first social media post and admitted she had believed the story without asking what defending herself meant. "She told us the bat barely touched you," Marjorie said. "The medical record says otherwise." "I do not need to see it. I should not have repeated something I did not know." I accepted the apology without giving her the video. She remained Lorraine's friend and began helping with the move months later. Accountability did not require her to become my ally. Denise struggled more openly. As Lorraine's younger sister, she had spent decades mediating conflicts. She called me after every new development with a different proposed compromise. Could I restore $2,000 monthly until the house sold? Could I pay the property taxes directly? Could I allow Caleb to return to the company in a role without financial access? Could Rebecca attend one dinner to reassure Lorraine that she still had children? Each proposal solved Lorraine's immediate distress by reassigning it. "What happens if none of us rescues her?" I finally asked. Denise sounded offended. She could lose the house. "That is a financial consequence, not a death. You do not understand what that home means." "I understand exactly what it means. That is why she used ownership of it to order me out after I paid its bills." Denise became quiet. "I am not asking you to stop helping your sister," I continued. "I am asking you to stop volunteering my money and Rebecca's presence." Several weeks later, Denise called to tell me she had agreed to help Lorraine compare condominiums, but would not co-sign a loan. It was the first boundary I heard her express without an apology. Family systems changed unevenly. My refusal did not transform everyone, but it made old transfers of responsibility visible. Caleb's relationship with work became another test. After termination, he applied for operations roles at other companies. Background questions required him to explain why he left Mercer Clinical Solutions. Our company provided truthful, limited information according to policy. We neither sabotaged him nor concealed the circumstances. 2 offers disappeared during screening. He blamed me in an early letter, arguing that financial ruin would reduce his ability to pay restitution. My attorney responded that the company would not issue a false reference. Caleb eventually accepted a lower-level logistics position with no purchasing authority. His new job paid less and required him to report to a manager younger than he was. In counseling, he apparently confronted how much of his identity had depended on the title I gave him. He wrote that losing authority felt like being reduced to nothing. I replied once through the approved channel. Employment is not a measure of human worth. It is also not immunity from qualifications and oversight. He later thanked me for the sentence. I did not become his mentor. The restitution schedule forced him to budget for the first time without Lorraine or me absorbing shortages. He sold the car purchased partly through improperly classified expenses and moved into a studio apartment. He canceled club memberships and withdrew from speculative trading accounts. These changes were not suffering I designed. They were the practical result of living within his actual means. In his 5th counseling letter, Caleb described the moment before Lorraine swung from his perspective. He saw the bat. He felt his body move. For years, stepping aside had been how he survived her anger. He had learned to remove himself and let the nearest person carry it. "I did not choose nothing," he wrote. "I chose the oldest thing I knew." That insight explained the speed of his movement. It did not make it harmless. I sent no reply, but I kept the letter. Some truths deserved recognition even when they did not earn reconciliation. My own recovery required confronting the unfinished townhouse as more than a symbol. Caleb had delayed renovations partly to keep Lorraine stable, but I had also allowed the project to remain vague because completion would force conflict. I had signed change orders without visiting, accepted unexplained pauses, and treated every postponement as a problem for my future self. With the new contractor, I attended weekly walkthroughs. We found materials Caleb had paid deposits on but never ordered and a bathroom change he approved without telling me. None connected to the company misuse. They were marital expenses handled carelessly. I resisted turning every disappointment into proof of conspiracy. The contractor, Lewis, gave me written options. When I changed my mind about tile, he adjusted the price and date. No one accused me of disloyalty. Ordinary professionalism felt almost luxurious. I chose warm wood floors instead of the gray finish Caleb preferred. I added locks to the office and a camera facing only the exterior entrances. I did not place surveillance inside the living spaces. The old camera had saved the truth, but I did not want safety to mean recording every room forever. The first time a carpenter carried a wooden beam through the dining area, it struck a door frame with a sharp crack. I dropped the glass in my hand and crouched before realizing what I had heard. Lewis set down the beam and kept his distance. "Do you want everyone outside?" I could not answer immediately. My heart raced as though Lorraine stood behind me. 5 minutes, I managed. The crew waited outdoors without complaint. After my breathing slowed, I asked them to continue. I did not force myself to pretend nothing had happened, and I did not abandon the house. That small decision felt as important as any legal document. Priya helped me find a trauma therapist experienced with domestic violence. I resisted the term at first because Lorraine was not my romantic partner, and the assault happened once. The therapist explained that domestic violence described harm within a household and family system, not only a repeated pattern between spouses. "But Caleb did not hit me," I said during the first session. "What did he do?" "He watched. And afterward. He tried to stop me from getting help." Naming those actions without exaggerating them allowed me to understand why his betrayal occupied so much space. I did not need to call him the person who swung the bat. His actual conduct was enough. We worked through sensory memories. The cream silk of Lorraine's blouse, the refrigerator motor, the maple barrel moving through the light. Caleb's empty hands. I learned to orient myself to the present by nomming what was different: my own walls, an unlocked exit, Priya's voice, the key in my pocket. For months, I sat only in chairs with a clear path to the door. Gradually, I stopped checking. I also confronted money. Before the assault, giving money relieved anxiety. If someone I loved had a problem, paying solved my fear that they might leave. Afterward, I swung toward excessive control. I examined every shared bill, questioned harmless gifts, and felt panic when my father paid for lunch. My therapist described both behaviors as attempts to purchase certainty. I began using a simple practice. Before giving money, I asked whether the gift was voluntary, transparent, affordable, and free from an expectation of emotional return. Before refusing, I asked whether I was protecting a boundary or punishing someone for reminding me of Lorraine. The questions slowed me down. They did not make every answer obvious. When an employee's child needed an expensive medical device not fully covered by insurance, my first impulse was to pay personally and anonymously. Instead, I worked with human resources to identify existing benefits and a transparent assistance process. My compassion became sustainable because it no longer depended on private rescue. The idea for the Safe Passage Fund grew from that change long before we named it. Alina's question provided the practical direction, but several experiences shaped the design. Priya showed me that emergency care could be immediate without becoming ownership. Marcus showed me that good intentions still needed controls. Rebecca showed me that leaving often required money before a person could explain everything safely. We invited a domestic violence advocate named Tasha Green to review our initial plan. She rejected half of it. You require too much proof before the first night of lodging, she said. Someone escaping danger may not have a police report, lease, or shared bank statement available. How do we prevent misuse? Marcus asked. Separate emergency stabilization from larger grants. Approve a small confidential amount quickly through trained reviewers. Require more documentation only for extended support. She also warned against informing direct supervisors unless scheduling changes required it. A manager did not need to know why an employee needed a hotel. We revised the program. Emergency assistance could be approved within hours by 2 trained reviewers outside the employee's reporting line. Larger grants required independent review. The company recorded categories without preserving unnecessary intimate details. Recipients received resource referrals, but were not required to pursue police action or leave a relationship on someone else's timetable. Support is not another form of command, Tasha said. That sentence became part of the training. I told the board why the initial allocation was $6,000 without disclosing more of my personal case than necessary. The number had once represented a recurring household payment that concealed dependency. Reusing it transparently would mark a change in purpose. One director worried the symbolism was too personal. The governance is not personal, I said. The motivation can be. The board approved a pilot with quarterly reporting and independent audit. My personal contribution went through the same rules as company money. I could not direct it toward a person I favored or demand gratitude from recipients. Giving up control over the gift was part of its meaning. While the fund developed, Lorraine continued interpreting every step as an attack. She told Denise I had created a domestic violence program to publicly label her an abuser. The program materials mentioned no names or incidents. Lorraine nevertheless recognized herself in any boundary I formed afterward. Rebecca advised me not to redesign good work around her mother's imagination. She will make herself the center either way, she said. At least let the actual center be useful. The most difficult social encounter occurred at the funeral of an elderly family friend 7 months after the assault. The protective restrictions allowed attendance with separation and no contact. I considered staying away, but the deceased woman had supported my first fundraiser for nurse scholarships. I wanted to honor her. Lorraine sat across the chapel with Denise. She had lost weight. When she saw me, her face tightened. Several people glanced between us, transforming grief into observation. I greeted the family, sat beside Priya, and did not approach Lorraine. After the service, Marjorie thanked me for coming. Lorraine moved toward the exit, then stopped several yards away. For a moment, I thought she might speak. Denise touched her elbow. Lorraine turned and left. I felt neither victory nor fear. We had occupied the same building without one of us controlling the other's presence. That ordinary coexistence represented progress. Later, a relative told me Lorraine cried in the car because I had ignored her. I complied with the no-contact conditions, I said. She thought you might at least look sorry. For attending a funeral. The relative had no answer. Lorraine still believed my face should regulate her emotions from across a room. My final medical appointment occurred 8 months after the injury. The physician tested my shoulder strength, reviewed the healed rib, and released me from formal treatment. She asked whether I felt safe at home. Yes, I said. The answer arrived without qualification. I walked to the parking lot and called Priya. She celebrated by asking whether I could finally help carry her groceries upstairs. 1 bag, I said. 2, you are medically cleared. We laughed. My body had become mine again through unremarkable uses. Lifting groceries, sleeping on either side, reaching for a shelf without anticipating pain. The assault remained part of my history, but it no longer narrated every movement. The legal consequences did not arrive in one satisfying wave. They accumulated through months of appointments, statements, negotiations, and dates written on calendars. That slowness became part of my recovery. I learned that accountability was not a dramatic doorbell followed by instant justice. The doorbell was only the moment Lorraine and Caleb discovered they could no longer control the process. Lorraine eventually accepted a negotiated criminal resolution after the court admitted the principal evidence and after her lawyer explained the risk of proceeding. The resolution required her to acknowledge striking me, comply with continued protective conditions, complete an intervention program, and accept a sentence that included supervision and restrictions appropriate to her age, record, and the injury. It was not the maximum consequence some relatives demanded, nor the meaningless warning others expected. At the hearing, Lorraine stood before the judge and said she had acted during an emotional crisis. She described feeling threatened by the sudden loss of financial support. The judge asked a question nobody in the family had asked her directly. Why did financial fear entitle you to use a weapon? Lorraine began explaining the mortgage, my income, and the years she had devoted to her children. The judge interrupted. I asked about your conduct, not the victim's resources. Lorraine looked toward me. I sat beside my attorney, close enough to see that her hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to comfort her. That reflex did not disappear merely because I understood it. I let it pass without acting. When invited to speak, I did not ask for revenge. The injury healed, I said. The more lasting harm came from being told that refusing money made me responsible for the violence used against me. I want the record to remain clear. I did not consent to being struck, and reporting it did not destroy this family. The choices made before and after the strike did that. Lorraine did not apologize to me in court. She later sent a letter through counsel. I am sorry the evening became physical. I hope one day you understand how frightened I was of losing my home and my son. The apology kept her fear at the center and turned my understanding into the missing ingredient. I did not respond. The company restitution matter ended differently. Caleb cooperated with the forensic review, surrendered claims concerning disputed personal reimbursements, and entered a structured repayment agreement for the confirmed unauthorized amount after insurance adjustments. Some assets were applied. Future payments were secured according to his realistic earning capacity. The process did not magically return every dollar at once, but it established responsibility. Questions about criminal financial exposure remained in the hands of appropriate authorities, not my personal bargaining. I provided records when required and refused to predict or manipulate outcomes. Caleb's cooperation, lack of prior history, and restitution efforts mattered. So did the repeated concealment. Whatever official decisions followed belonged to institutions evaluating evidence. Our divorce proceeded through mediation because neither of us wanted years of litigation. The prenuptial and company records protected Mercer Clinical Solutions as my premarital creation, while ordinary marital property was divided under applicable rules. Caleb received what the law and our agreement recognized, not what Lorraine believed a husband deserved for proximity to a successful wife. He relinquished any claim to the townhouse after receiving credit through other assets. I refinanced the remaining renovation debt solely in my name. We divided furniture, accounts, and personal belongings through lists because meeting in Lorraine's house was no longer possible. One list contained the small objects that made divorce feel real. The blue ceramic bowl we bought on our honeymoon, the record player Caleb repaired, my mother's recipe box, his father's tools, 6 mismatched wineglasses, and the blanket we used during the first winter in my office. Caleb asked for the blanket. I gave it to him. I kept the recipe box. No legal document could divide the meanings attached to those objects. We carried separate versions away. Lorraine's financial reality changed as soon as the monthly transfer ended. She used the final $6,000 for the next mortgage and utilities, then borrowed from a home equity line already close to its limit. Denise organized a budget meeting. For the first time, relatives saw that Lorraine's lifestyle had depended on my support far beyond ordinary housing costs. She sold designer bags, canceled the cleaner, and withdrew from the city shopping group. She initially framed each change as punishment I had imposed. A financial advisor eventually explained that the house itself consumed more than her retirement income could sustain. Lorraine resisted selling for 6 months. The colonial represented sacrifice, motherhood, status, and the authority of saying my house. Yet a building could not live on symbolism. She listed it in spring and moved into a smaller condominium across Fairhaven. I did not celebrate the sale. I knew what losing a home meant to her. I also knew I had never promised lifetime support. Compassion did not require renewing the transfer. The final Sunday before closing, Denise told me Lorraine sat alone at the dining table after relatives removed boxes. Caleb had stopped attending weekly dinners. Rebecca declined to return for a farewell ritual that would inevitably become an accusation. The chairs remained around the table, but the emotional system that assigned everyone a place had dissolved. Lorraine sold the table with the house. Caleb and Lorraine's relationship survived, but it no longer resembled their old alliance. He visited occasionally and refused financial discussions without a third party. Lorraine blamed his boundaries on therapy and me. Caleb stopped arguing about the source. He learned that a boundary did not need the other person to agree with its origin. Rebecca maintained limited contact by mail. She sent holiday cards without return addresses and allowed her children to decide when they were older whether they wanted a relationship. She did not become Lorraine's emergency provider after the house sale. Relatives pressured her less once they understood that urging reconciliation often meant recruiting a new source of money and care. My father visited the townhouse every Saturday during the remaining renovation. He still expressed love through tasks, but he began asking before fixing things. One afternoon, while we painted the hallway, he apologized again for praising strength when I needed comfort. "I thought strong meant you would survive whatever happened," he said. "I thought it meant I had to stay until everything was repaired." He rolled paint over a pale mark on the wall. "Some things are not yours to repair." Our relationship did not transform through one conversation. We practiced. I told him when I needed him to listen instead of solve. He admitted when emotion frightened him. We became closer without pretending the lost years had never existed. Priya remained the person who could ask whether I was safe without making me feel weak. After my ribs healed, I took her to dinner to thank her. She accepted the meal but refused the expensive watch I had bought. "You are doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "Trying to make care balance to 0. I returned the watch. Receiving help without immediate repayment felt more vulnerable than writing checks. I practiced that too. At work, the new controls initially frustrated managers accustomed to quick approvals. We refined them until urgent staffing remained possible without giving one person invisible discretion. I established quarterly independent reviews and prohibited family reporting lines involving financial authorization. Some colleagues considered the rules an overreaction. I considered them tuition paid for a lesson I would not purchase twice. Mercer Clinical Solutions retained its clients. The company did not collapse because I admitted a failure. Transparency within proper boundaries strengthened it. Employees learned that seniority and intimacy did not place anyone beyond review. Elena, the scheduling coordinator who had spoken to me after the staff meeting, asked months later whether the company offered emergency support for employees leaving unsafe homes. One of her colleagues needed a hotel after a partner threatened her, and the existing assistance program required documentation that could take days. We found a temporary solution, but the question remained with me. Every first business day of the month, my banking application still sent a reminder that the old $6,000 transfer had once been scheduled. The transfer itself was inactive. I could have deleted the reminder immediately, but for several months I left it. At first, I told myself it preserved records. The bank already preserved records. In truth, the notification measured the space between obligation and choice. The first reminder after Lorraine listed the house arrived while I was reviewing the proposed employee assistance expansion. $6,000 could cover several emergency hotel stays, transportation, replacement documents, childcare, or legal consultations. The amount that had maintained one family's silence could become immediate breathing room for people trying to leave danger. I asked Marcus to model a fund. He insisted on governance from the beginning. "It cannot depend entirely on your personal judgment," he said. "Otherwise, we rebuild the same concentration of power with better intentions." We designed eligibility standards, confidential review, rapid initial grants, and independent oversight. Priya connected us with domestic violence professionals who explained what people actually needed. We avoided requiring a police report because many victims could not safely obtain one immediately. We created safeguards without turning assistance into another interrogation. I named it the Mercer Safe Passage Fund. I considered using my mother's name, but decided the program should belong to employees rather than to my grief. The initial company allocation was $6,000, matched by a personal contribution of the same amount. Marcus noticed the number, but did not comment until the documents were signed. "Different category," he said. "Completely different." This money was voluntary, transparent, and governed. Nobody had to express affection to receive it. Nobody owed obedience afterward. The first employee used the fund 3 weeks later for temporary lodging and secure transportation. I never learned her name. Confidentiality prevented it, exactly as intended. Knowing only that the system worked was enough. My physical recovery finished before my emotional recovery. The rib knitted. The bruising vanished. My shoulder regained full motion after therapy. Yet certain sounds still tightened my body. Wood striking a hard surface, a door closing behind me, Lorraine's ringtone in a crowded room. Trauma did not respect the legal calendar. Counseling helped me notice the reactions without organizing my life around avoiding them. I returned to the dining room footage only when required. I stopped using it to test whether my memory deserved belief. One afternoon, Detective Ruiz returned the personal property no longer needed as evidence. The bat remained subject to the disposition ordered in Lorraine's case and was not restored to the old wall. Ruiz gave me a final evidence receipt. "A strange ending for a family keepsake," I said. "Objects carry what people do with them," she replied. The framed photograph stayed with Caleb after the house sale. He later told Rebecca he had removed it from display. I did not ask what happened to it. The boy in the photograph had not caused the man Caleb became, and I no longer needed to make every symbol resolve neatly. Lorraine requested contact one final time before the divorce ended. Her intervention counselor suggested she write an accountability letter, but the decision to receive it belonged to me. I agreed to accept the letter through counsel with no obligation to answer. The envelope arrived without perfume, embossed stationery, or a family photograph. Lorraine's handwriting looked smaller than I remembered. She began by describing the practical facts. She had demanded money. I refused. She retrieved the bat to frighten me. She swung it. I was injured. Caleb did not stop her. She tried afterward to describe the event as mutual because admitting the sequence threatened the way she understood herself. For the first time, she did not call the strike an accident. She wrote that after her husband died, the colonial became proof that she had not lost everything. Every repair and mortgage notice felt like a threat to the identity she performed for other people. When my payments began, she experienced relief, then shame, then entitlement. Calling the money rent allowed her to believe she was not dependent. Demanding more allowed her to test whether the support had limits. When I said no, she heard not only a financial refusal, but the collapse of the story in which she remained the family's provider. "None of that was your responsibility," she wrote. "Fear explains why I wanted control. It does not explain away what I did with the bat." The next paragraph became less complete. She said she still believed I had removed Caleb from her life and that involving police had made reconciliation harder. Then she crossed out several lines so heavily the paper tore. The final sentence read, "I do not know how to be sorry without asking you to make me feel forgiven." I sat with the letter for a long time. It was not perfect accountability. Lorraine still carried resentment, still interpreted consequences through loss, and still wanted a relationship outcome her conduct had made impossible. But one honest sentence existed where denial had been. I placed the letter in the same locked box as Caleb's fourth letter. I did not reply. Forgiveness, if it developed, would not mean renewed contact. I could recognize movement without volunteering to become the destination. Rebecca chose to read a copy after Lorraine sent her one separately. Her letter contained different admissions about money and exclusion. Rebecca called me afterward. "I waited 20 years for her to say some of this," she said. "Now I do not know what to do with it." "You do not have to do anything immediately." That sounds like something a healthy person would say. "I am practicing." Rebecca eventually sent Lorraine a brief acknowledgement. She did not restore visits. Caleb began speaking with his mother by phone once a week, ending calls when blame replaced conversation. Denise helped Lorraine settle into the condominium but kept separate finances. No branch of the family returned to its earlier shape. Healing did not rebuild the structure that had caused the harm. It created smaller relationships with doors, limits, and choices. The first quarterly Safe Passage report tested whether the new program matched its intentions. 2 applications had been approved within hours. One larger request required clarification because the proposed payment would have gone into a joint account accessible to the person creating danger. Reviewers worked with the employee to pay the landlord directly instead. One request was denied because it concerned ordinary moving expenses unrelated to safety. Tasha reviewed the denial and confirmed that compassion did not require turning the program into an unlimited hardship fund. Clear scope protected future recipients. The board asked whether successful assistance should be measured by whether recipients permanently left their relationships. Tasha objected. "Safety is not a straight line," she said. "Measure whether people received what the program promised, whether confidentiality held, and whether options increased. Do not turn aid into obedience." We changed the metrics. The fund tracked response time, housing stability, confidentiality, resource access, and employment retention. It did not judge intimate decisions from a boardroom. That distinction returned me to my hospital bed. Priya had helped without demanding that I file a report, end my marriage, or become brave on schedule. She gave me enough safety to choose. At the fund's 6-month review, Simone reported that no supervisor had learned a recipient's identity through the process. The independent reviewers requested additional training and a backup approval pathway for weekends. We approved both. I never addressed recipients directly. I did not record a message about my story or require them to hear why the fund existed. The absence of my face from the program felt important. Help did not need to advertise its giver. One anonymous note reached the board through the confidential portal. "I used the hotel grant for 3 nights. Nobody asked why I had gone back twice before. On the 4th day, my sister came for me. I still work here because my manager only knew I needed leave, not what happened. Thank you for letting me decide who knew." I read the note once and closed it. The old $6,000 payment had demanded that I hide what happened inside Lorraine's home. The new allocation protected another person's right to reveal only what she chose. That was the reversal I valued most. Money had not become virtuous merely because I spent it differently. The structure around it had changed. The recipient possessed choice. The giver possessed limits. Records created accountability without becoming surveillance. Gratitude was welcome but never required. My final conversation with Marcus about the original investigation occurred after the insurer closed its review. He brought the archived report to my office and asked how long I wanted supporting records retained beyond legal requirements. We followed counsel's schedule rather than my emotions. "Do you regret showing me the expense summaries that day?" I asked. "No," even knowing what followed. The records did not cause what followed. It was the professional version of what Ruiz and Priya had taught me. Evidence did not create betrayal. Reporting violence did not create violence. A boundary did not create dependency. Those actions made existing truth harder to avoid. Marcus closed the file. Do you regret waiting until month end? Yes. Good. Regret is useful when it changes a process. It is useless when it becomes an identity. We stored the report. The office that once held Caleb's title became a small compliance and employee support suite. Simone suggested the change because the location was private but accessible. I hesitated before approving it, worried that repurposing the room was too symbolic. Then I remembered that practical use was allowed to carry meaning. The nameplate came down. No ceremony accompanied it. Several days later, I drove past Lorraine's former colonial for the first time since the family meeting. I had not planned the route. Road construction diverted traffic through her old neighborhood, and suddenly the familiar stone mailbox appeared ahead. A different family lived there. Children's bicycles rested against the porch. The front curtains were open, and through the dining room window I could see a young couple assembling shelves. The wall beneath Caleb's old photograph had been painted green. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. For nearly 3 years, I had treated the house as if it possessed memory and judgment. I expected my body to return to the floor beside the table. Instead, I saw lumber, glass, paint, and strangers making ordinary decisions. The house had never demanded $6,000. Lorraine had. The dining room had never assigned loyalty. We had. A front door could be used to welcome someone, order someone out, admit police, or simply let children run into a yard. Meaning came from the people crossing it. I pulled over 1 block away and allowed the reaction to pass. My breathing remained steady. I did not photograph the house or message Rebecca. Some milestones did not require witnesses. Before driving on, I remembered the flowers Lorraine once left in my room. I had spent months deciding whether they were evidence of manipulation. Perhaps sometimes they were. Perhaps sometimes she had sincerely wanted to make me feel welcome. The later harm did not need every earlier kindness to be counterfeit. That understanding returned something to me. If all kindness concealed control, trusting anyone would become impossible. The lesson was not to doubt every flower. It was to notice whether affection survived a boundary. At the townhouse, a delivery waited beside my door, the round oak table I had ordered for the completed dining area. The workers asked which end should face the kitchen. "It is round," one of them said, laughing at his own question. "Exactly," I replied. We centered it beneath the light. No chair possessed a permanent position. I sat in each one before choosing nothing at all. That evening, I wrote 4 words on a card and placed it inside my mother's recipe box. Care is not control. The sentence did not summarize everything. It simply gave me a rule I could carry forward without carrying Lorraine with it. The divorce became final 11 months after the assault. The hearing occurred remotely and lasted less than 20 minutes. The judge reviewed the agreement, asked whether both of us entered it voluntarily, and signed the order. Caleb appeared in a small square on my screen. When the proceeding ended, he remained connected for 1 second longer than necessary. Then his image disappeared. I expected a wave of liberation. Instead, I closed the laptop and sat quietly. 6 years of marriage had ended with a digital tone. Priya and Rebecca both offered to come over. I asked them to wait until evening because I wanted several hours alone. That choice was different from isolation. I knew they would come if called. I walked through the townhouse. The kitchen cabinets had doors now. The hallway paint was dry. My father's uneven chair remained near the window because I had decided not to fix it. The small imperfection made me smile. In the bedroom, I opened the box containing my mother's recipe cards. 1 card held her handwriting for a stew she cooked whenever someone returned home after a long trip. At the bottom she had written, "Let it rest before serving. Not everything improves by being stirred." I laughed and cried at once. That evening, Priya brought bread. Rebecca brought her family and the lamp she had once mailed. My father carried a pot of stew made from my mother's recipe, though he had added too much pepper. We ate at a round oak table I chose because it had no head. Nobody offered a toast to survival. Nobody asked me to describe the court proceeding. Rebecca's children argued about a board game. Priya teased my father about the chair. Conversation moved without one person controlling its direction. Halfway through dinner, I realized I had not calculated what anyone owed me for the meal. After they left, I washed the dishes slowly. The house settled around me, no longer painfully silent. It held evidence of people who could enter without claiming ownership. My phone lit with the monthly banking reminder. Scheduled household contribution, $6,000. The instruction beneath it remained inactive, but the reminder had followed me through the investigation, the house sale, the divorce, and the first safe passage grant. I opened the settings. For years, that amount had meant mortgage security, Sunday dinners, flowers in my room, opened mail, delayed plans, and the price of being called a daughter. Later, it meant the demand that exposed everything. Then it became a number I had refused to fear. I selected delete reminder. The application asked whether I was sure. I did not think of Lorraine losing her house or Caleb losing his job. I thought of the woman at the dining table moving her phone away instead of purchasing quiet. I thought of the woman on the floor asking for help. I thought of the woman at the hospital pressing confirm with one usable hand. I selected yes. The reminder disappeared. An email arrived moments later confirming the first quarterly report for the Mercer Safe Passage Fund. The report contained no names, only categories: safe lodging, transportation, childcare, document replacement, counseling, legal consultation. 6 employees had received help. All 6 remained employed. 4 had moved into stable housing. I stood at the kitchen window with the report open on my phone. Across the dark glass, my reflection looked ordinary. No triumphant music played. No enemy watched me win. The greatest change was that nobody else needed to witness my decision for it to be real. Before I went upstairs, I opened the front door and stood on the threshold. Cold air moved through the hallway, carrying the scent of new paint and rain. I remembered leaving Lorraine's house unable to lift my arm, unsure where I would sleep, and still tempted to protect the people who had abandoned me. The woman standing there now was not fearless. She had simply stopped treating fear as proof that she should surrender. I closed the door, checked the lock, and left the key on its hook. Safety no longer felt borrowed, temporary, or dependent upon anyone else's permission to remain mine. My mother-in-law once believed $6,000 proved she owned a permanent place inside my choices. My husband believed silence allowed him to escape choosing at all. I had believed endurance was the price of being good. We were all wrong. Generosity was not a debt other people could collect. Silence was not neutrality. Strength was not the ability to remain where love had become dangerous. I turned off the kitchen light and placed the townhouse key on its hook beside the door. It no longer felt like an escape route. It was simply the key to my own home. My name is Naomi Elise Mercer. I was 36 years old when my mother-in-law demanded $5,000 for a shopping trip, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. What made the demand extraordinary was not only the amount. For nearly 3 years, I had already transferred $6,000 into Lorraine Mercer's account on the first business day of every month. That evening, she sat at the head of her dining table in a cream silk blouse, one hand beside a printed credit card statement and the other resting on the polished wood. My husband, Caleb, stood near the windows with his phone face down in his palm. Neither of them looked surprised by the number Lorraine had just named. "I need it by tomorrow morning," she said. "$5,000. The girls and I are going into the city, and I will not be embarrassed because my daughter-in-law suddenly decided to become stingy." I stared at her. "You received $6,000 4 days ago." "That is household money. It pays your mortgage, taxes, utilities, groceries, and the woman who cleans this house twice a week." Lorraine leaned back. "Then call this something else." Caleb rubbed the edge of his phone with his thumb. He still would not meet my eyes. That was the moment I understood the money was not the only thing wrong. Lorraine was unusually anxious beneath her contempt, and Caleb knew why. I could see it in the way he watched the credit card statement instead of watching me. I did not yet know what they were hiding, but before the night ended, Lorraine would hit me with the baseball bat she had displayed for years as a symbol of everything she had sacrificed for her son. I would fall beside that table, and the man who had promised to protect me would simply watch. Before I tell you how a demand for shopping money ended with police outside Lorraine's house the next morning, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like this video. More importantly, stay with me, because what looked like one violent argument was only the first visible crack in a family arrangement I had spent years paying to preserve. To explain why I was sitting in Lorraine's dining room negotiating over money I had earned, I have to go back 3 years, to the month Caleb, and I arrived at her house with 12 boxes and a promise that we would be gone before winter. Caleb and I had been married for 3 years then. I owned Mercer Clinical Solutions, a medical staffing company I had started from a borrowed office with 2 folding desks, and a list of nurses who trusted me to find them honest work. Caleb had joined the company after his former employer downsized. He was good with people, comfortable on the phone, and familiar enough with our systems that I promoted him to operations director. I kept ownership and major financial authority, but I gave him access to ordinary purchasing and departmental expenses because I believed a marriage could not survive if every act of trust required an audit. We had purchased a townhouse across Fairhaven and begun renovating it. 8 months was the estimate. Then the contractor found water damage behind 2 walls. Supply delays followed. Caleb suggested moving into his mother's 6-bedroom colonial instead of wasting money on a rental. "Mom will love having us," he told me, "and we can help her while we are there." Lorraine had been widowed for 11 years. She spoke often about raising Caleb and his sister, Rebecca, after their father died, though Caleb had already been 27 at the time. The story changed depending on the audience. At church, Lorraine described herself as a proud mother who had never accepted help. At home, every sacrifice had a price she was still collecting. I did not understand that yet. My own mother had died when I was 17. Afterward, my father praised me for being strong whenever he needed me not to grieve where he could see it. I learned to cook, manage bills, and solve problems before anyone had to ask. Lorraine's attention felt maternal in a way I had missed for years. When she called me her daughter, I heard a promise. I did not realize she heard a contract. The first month in her house, I offered $2,000 toward expenses. Lorraine refused with tears in her eyes and kissed my cheek. A week later, Caleb showed me a stack of overdue notices he said he had found on her desk. The mortgage was behind. Property taxes were approaching. The heating system needed repair. "She is too proud to tell us," he said. "If we pay rent, she will accept it without feeling like charity." We calculated the mortgage, taxes, utilities, groceries, cleaning, and basic maintenance. $6,000 covered nearly everything. It was far more than our fair share, but I told myself it was temporary. I created the automatic transfer and labeled it household contribution. Lorraine stopped refusing after the first payment. At first, the arrangement seemed peaceful. She left fresh flowers in our room. She introduced me to neighbors as the daughter she had gained. Every Sunday, she sat at the head of the dining table while I cooked and paid for groceries. Guests praised her for keeping the family together. I smiled because I wanted the story to be true. Winter arrived, but the townhouse was not ready. Caleb changed contractors after an argument over invoices. Spring brought permit delays. By summer, the work could have resumed, but Caleb insisted that his mother was not emotionally prepared for us to leave. "Give her another few months," he said. "She finally feels secure." Security became a word that always meant I should surrender something. Lorraine began opening my mail if it arrived at the house. She entered our bedroom without knocking. If I bought myself a coat, she asked why I had not thought to buy one for her. When I objected, Caleb translated my boundary into softer language until it sounded like a request Lorraine could decline. His sister Rebecca had already left Fairhaven. Lorraine said she had become selfish after marrying. On the rare occasions Rebecca attended a holiday dinner, she was polite to me and distant with her mother. Once, while Lorraine was in the kitchen, Rebecca glanced at the envelopes stacked beside my plate. Be careful what you make normal, she said quietly. I thought she was talking about household chores. Lorraine later told me Rebecca was jealous because Caleb had stayed loyal while she had abandoned the family. I accepted that explanation because it allowed me to remain the good daughter Lorraine said I was. 2 years into the arrangement, someone broke into my car and stole a case containing sample medical devices. I installed cloud-connected cameras around the house, including one covering the back entrance and the dining room. Lorraine complained that cameras made a family home feel like a bank. Caleb laughed. Naomi makes everything secure enough to pass an inspection. Mounted beside the back doorway, just within the dining room camera's view, was Caleb's old maple baseball bat. Lorraine had preserved it from his high school championship season. She brought it down whenever guests asked about the framed team photograph above it. I worked double shifts to keep him in that league, she would say, pressing the bat into Caleb's hands. That is what a mother does for her son. By then, I had heard the story enough to recite it. I never imagined the bat would become evidence against her. The first warning that the trouble extended beyond Lorraine came from Marcus Bell, my outside accountant. 3 weeks before the confrontation, he placed several expense summaries on my desk. The operations categories are getting muddy, he said. Hospitality, emergency procurement, vehicle expenses. Individually, nothing is enormous. Together, I want documentation. Caleb supervised those categories. I felt a quick sting of embarrassment, as though reviewing his work would be a public admission that I did not trust my husband. Ask him for the receipts, I said. Marcus studied me over his glasses. I did, some are still missing. He has been dealing with his mother and the renovation. Give him until month end. Marcus did not argue. Month end then. That deadline was 6 days away, when Lorraine demanded the extra $5,000. Back in the dining room, I looked from the statement beneath her hand to Caleb's lowered face. What is due tomorrow? I asked. Lorraine slid the paper toward herself. Nothing that concerns you. You just said you need my money by tomorrow morning. That makes it concern me. I said I need shopping money. I am going into the city with women who do not count every dollar before they leave the house. Then spend what you can afford. The room became so quiet that I heard the refrigerator motor start in the kitchen. Lorraine's lips parted. Caleb finally lifted his head. Naomi, he said, there is no reason to make this confrontational. I did not make it confrontational. Your mother demanded $5,000. Lorraine tapped one manicured finger against the table. After everything I have done for both of you. We pay nearly every expense in this house. You live under my roof. Because Caleb keeps delaying our move. He flinched as if I had betrayed a private agreement. The townhouse is complicated. The electrical inspection passed 2 months ago. The remaining work is flooring and paint. Mom has had a difficult year. Lorraine turned to him. Do not explain me to her. He lowered his eyes again. I had negotiated contracts with hospital systems that employed thousands of people. I had sat across from executives who tried to disguise demands as favors. I knew that the first clear no revealed more than a dozen reluctant compromises. Yet in Lorraine's house, I had trained myself to soften every boundary before speaking it. That evening, I did not soften it. No, I said, I am not giving you another $5,000. Lorraine gave a short laugh. You mean not tonight? I mean not tomorrow, not after your trip, and not when the next statement arrives. The $6,000 payment already exceeds anything we owe for living here. It stops being automatic after this month. Caleb and I are finishing the townhouse and moving. Caleb stepped away from the window. You cannot decide that in the middle of an argument. I have asked you to set a moving date for more than a year. So this is punishment. No, it is a decision. Lorraine's chair scraped backward. Your success has made you arrogant. I remained seated, partly because standing felt like escalation, and partly because my knees had begun to tremble. My success is the reason your mortgage is current. Her face changed. The social warmth vanished so completely that I wondered how I had ever mistaken it for affection. "You think money makes you the woman in charge here?" she asked. "No, I think earning it lets me decide whether I give it away." Caleb moved between us, but his body faced me. "Just transfer it, Naomi. We can discuss boundaries afterward." I stared at him. "You knew she would ask." "She mentioned the trip. She mentioned the exact amount, too, didn't she?" He exhaled. "Mom has a payment she needs to handle." Lorraine snapped, "Caleb." That single warning confirmed more than his answer had. "What payment?" I asked. "It is temporary," he said. "I planned to sort it out before you had to worry." "Is this connected to the expenses Marcus asked about?" Caleb's expression tightened. Lorraine looked at him, then at me. "You interrogate your husband through employees now." "Marcus is the company's accountant. Caleb is an employee with purchasing access. He is your husband. That company would be nothing without his support." I watched Caleb wait for me to reassure him. It was an old rhythm. Lorraine diminished me, Caleb looked wounded by the tension, and I repaired both injuries while ignoring my own. "Answer me," I said. "Does the 5,000 have anything to do with company money?" "Not in the way you are making it sound." "Then explain the way it is." "We should talk privately." "You involved your mother privately before involving your wife." Lorraine struck the table with her palm. "Enough. You will not humiliate my son in my house." "I am asking him about money from my company." "Your company, your money, your rules, that is all you ever say." "I have spent 3 years saying our family, our home, and our future. Look where that brought me." Lorraine stepped away from her chair. "It brought you into a family better than the one you came from." The words found the youngest part of me, the girl who had stood beside her mother's hospital bed and then learned never to inconvenience anyone with grief. Lorraine knew that history. She had once held me while I described it. Caleb whispered, "Mom, stop." She did not. "Your father was happy to let you become hard because it made his life easier. I tried to teach you what family means, but you cannot buy a mother's love and threaten to repossess it whenever you do not get your way." For one dangerous second, I wanted to prove her wrong by transferring the money. My hand was inches from my phone. $5,000 was less than Mercer Clinical Solutions billed in an ordinary morning. I could have purchased immediate quiet. Then I looked at Caleb. He was not shocked that his mother had used my dead mother against me. He looked impatient, as if he were waiting for me to finish being hurt so I could solve the practical problem. I moved my phone away. "The answer is no." Lorraine walked toward the back doorway. At first, I thought she was leaving. Then she reached for the maple bat beneath Caleb's framed photograph. He saw her hand close around it. "Mom," he said. She pulled the bat free and turned. "She thinks she can come into my house, insult my son, and throw me away like an employee." I stood, "Put that down." Lorraine held it across her body. Her grip looked awkward, but the barrel was solid and the room was small. "You are being ridiculous," Caleb said, though I could not tell which of us he meant. I took one step toward the hallway. Lorraine shifted to block it. "Say you are sorry," she said. "I am leaving." "Apologize and make the transfer." "No." Caleb stood close enough to take the bat from her. I saw him calculate the cost. Touching it would mean choosing me in a way his mother could not reinterpret. He raised one hand but did not move forward. "Mom, give it a rest," he said. Lorraine lifted the bat. There was time. That was what the video later made impossible to deny. There were almost 4 seconds between the moment she raised it and the moment she swung. Caleb could have stepped between us. He could have grabbed her wrists. He could have shouted for me to move. Instead, he stepped sideways. The bat struck my left shoulder and upper ribs with a sound softer than I expected. My body understood before my mind did. Air vanished from my lungs. The edge of the table hit my hip, and then I was on the floor with one arm trapped beneath me. For a moment, I heard nothing but a thin ringing. The dining room light fractured into bright lines above my face. "Naomi," Caleb said. I turned my head toward him. He was still standing beside the window. His hands were empty. Lorraine lowered the bat. Her anger had changed to alarm, but she did not come closer. She came at me, she said. I had not. Caleb finally knelt, but when I tried to sit up, pain folded through my side. I gasped and pushed his hand away. Call an ambulance, I said. Lorraine's fear sharpened. Absolutely not. She is bruised, not dying. Caleb looked from her to me. Can you breathe? Call an ambulance. Naomi, if we bring police and paramedics here, this becomes something none of us can take back. I stared at him. I had just watched his mother hit me with a bat, and he was warning me about what I might destroy. Give me my phone. It had fallen beneath a chair. He reached for it, then hesitated when Lorraine said his name. That hesitation finished what the bat had begun. I dragged myself onto my knees. Every breath pulled against my ribs. I crawled far enough to reach the phone with my right hand and used the table to stand. Get out, Lorraine said. Her voice shook, but the command restored some of her confidence. If you are going to threaten this family, you can leave my house tonight. Caleb rose. Nobody is throwing anyone out. She said the payment stop. She said she is leaving. Let her prove she can live without us. I looked at him. Are you coming with me? His mouth opened. Lorraine still held the bat. We need to calm down first, he said. I nodded once. It hurt less than speaking. Our bedroom was upstairs, but I could not lift my left arm and did not trust myself on the staircase. My handbag was on a console near the front door. Inside it were my wallet, charger, medication, and the brass key to the unfinished townhouse. I took the bag. Caleb followed me into the hall. Where are you going? Away from you. Let me drive you somewhere. You had a chance to help me. I froze. It happened fast. At that moment, I almost believed him. Shock can delay a person. Fear can make good people fail for a second. Then he lowered his voice. Please do not call the police before we talk. Mom could lose everything over one mistake. He was not frozen anymore. He was choosing. I opened the door and stepped into the cold evening air. Priya answered on the first ring. She heard my breathing and did not waste time asking whether I was sure. Stay where there are lights, she said. I am coming. I waited at the end of the driveway because I could not bear to remain on Lorraine's property. Through the front windows, I saw Caleb moving between rooms. He did not come outside. Lorraine's silhouette crossed the dining room once, then disappeared. Priya arrived in 12 minutes wearing navy scrubs beneath her coat. She got out, saw how I was holding my side, and opened the passenger door. Who did this? Lorraine. Where is Caleb? I looked back at the house. Priya followed my gaze and understood enough to stop asking until we reached the hospital. The emergency department smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee. Priya was not assigned to my case, but she stayed while another physician examined me. Imaging showed no punctured lung and no displaced fracture. I had severe bruising along my shoulder and upper ribs, a small non-displaced rib fracture, and pain that would make ordinary movements difficult for weeks. I heard myself say, "It looks worse than it is." Priya stood beside the bed. "Naomi, she hit you with a baseball bat. I can go home tonight. You do not have to be dying for this to count." The sentence broke through me more cleanly than anger could have. I turned my face toward the wall and cried without making a sound. Priya did not tell me to be strong. She adjusted the blanket and stayed. Caleb called 11 times. His messages changed as the minutes passed. Please answer. Mom is horrified. You know she did not mean to hurt you. Tell me where you are. We need to handle this privately. Your silence is making everything worse. Not one message asked whether I could breathe without pain. While the nurse documented my bruising, I remembered the dining room camera. I opened the security application with my right hand. The system had uploaded the evening automatically. I found the recording and pressed play. There was Lorraine at the table. There was my refusal. There was her hand reaching for the bat. The camera angle showed Caleb more clearly than it showed me. I watched the 4 seconds again. Lorraine raised the bat. Caleb shifted his weight. He looked directly at the weapon, then at me. Instead of moving between us, he stepped sideways and cleared her path. After I fell, the microphone captured Lorraine saying I had come at her. It captured me asking for an ambulance. It captured Caleb warning that involving police would create something we could not take back. "Send that to yourself somewhere he cannot access," Priya said. I created 3 copies. One went to a private cloud folder. One went to Priya. One went to the attorney who handled corporate matters for Mercer Clinical Solutions, with instructions to preserve it and contact me immediately. Then I called the police. An officer took my initial statement at the hospital and collected the link to the footage. I answered every question plainly. Each answer felt like stepping farther from the woman who would have gone home and apologized for upsetting everyone. When the officer left, I opened the company administration portal. Caleb's account showed active sessions on his phone and laptop. As majority owner, I had authority to suspend access when company information or funds were at risk. I selected his profile and pressed suspend. The system asked me to confirm. I thought of Marcus's missing receipts. I thought of Lorraine silencing Caleb when he mentioned a payment. I confirmed. Next, I opened my bank. The $6,000 household transfer was scheduled to repeat on the first business day of the following month. I canceled the standing instruction. That action did not take Lorraine's house, seize her money, or punish her without process. It simply stopped giving her mine. At 1:18 in the morning, I called Marcus. He answered with a rough, sleepy voice. "Naomi, I need the review you recommended." At 1 in the morning. "Caleb's access is suspended. Preserve every log connected to his account. Do not contact him. Include anything classified as hospitality, emergency procurement, vehicles, or executive support." Silence sharpened on his end. "Has something happened?" "Yes, I do not know yet whether it involves the company. I need facts before anyone has time to change them." "I will call the platform administrator now." My corporate attorney called next. She arranged for an emergency protective application, formal preservation notices, and service of Caleb's suspension documents. She reminded me that the assault investigation and financial review were separate matters. Evidence would determine what followed. Nothing would be completed overnight. I did not need everything completed. I needed the people who had mistaken my patience for helplessness to understand that the old arrangement was over. That realization did not make me feel powerful. It made me feel cold. For 6 years, Caleb had been the person I called when a hospital canceled a contract, when an employee was injured, or when the anniversary of my mother's death arrived and I could not sleep. I remembered him bringing food to my first office because I had worked through dinner. I remembered the night Mercer Clinical Solutions made its first profit, and he danced with me between the folding desks. Those memories had not vanished. They had become evidence of why accepting the present was so painful. Priya saw me staring at his messages and pulled a chair beside the bed. "You are allowed to remember good things," she said. "They do not cancel what happened tonight." What if he really did freeze? She did not answer for me. She pointed toward my phone. "Watch what he did after." I played the recording beyond the strike. Caleb did not check whether Lorraine might swing again. He did not take the bat. He did not place himself between us while I tried to stand. His first decisive movement came when I reached for my phone. He bent toward it, then stopped because his mother said his name. The violence lasted seconds. His allegiance continued afterward. I saved his messages too. I did not know which details would matter legally, and I refused to invent certainty. What mattered to me was simpler. The man who called himself a peacemaker had tried to preserve peace by asking the injured person to remain quiet. My father called after Priya notified him. We were not an emotionally fluent family, and his first question was whether I had spoken with a lawyer. Then his voice broke. "I taught you to handle everything," he said. "I should have taught you that you were allowed to leave things other people broke." I closed my eyes. For years, I had blamed him for turning strength into my only acceptable emotion. Hearing him accept part of that history did not repair it, but it loosened something inside me. I left, I said. Good, stay gone tonight. After the call, the nurse returned with discharge instructions. I had to monitor my breathing, use pain medication carefully, and return immediately if shortness of breath worsened. Ordinary actions would be difficult. Reaching overhead, driving, carrying bags, and sleeping flat were temporarily unsafe or painful. The practical limitations angered me in a new way. Lorraine had not merely frightened me. She had altered the next several weeks of my body because she believed my refusal was an offense against her authority. Caleb sent another message, while Priya helped me into my coat. Mom says you threatened her first. Please tell the police this was mutual before it goes too far. I read it twice. He had watched the entire confrontation, yet before sunrise he had already begun negotiating the truth. I forwarded the message to the evidence folder. The corporate platform administrator called Marcus at 2:06 and confirmed that Caleb's sessions had been terminated. Marcus then sent me a concise note listing the records under preservation: purchasing logs, expense uploads, card statements, deleted receipt references, vendor changes, and remote access history. He warned me that a proper review would take time. Take the time, I replied. Just make sure nothing disappears. My attorney also explained what the process server could and could not deliver that morning. Caleb would receive formal notice of his access suspension and preservation obligations. Lorraine would receive notice connected to the emergency protective application if approved for service. Police would handle their own investigation. No envelope could decide guilt, remove Lorraine from her property, or finish a financial case in a day. The distinction steadied me. I did not want fantasy justice. I wanted every consequence tied to something they had actually chosen. Before leaving the hospital, I photographed the swelling again beside the identification band carrying the date and time. Priya gathered the discharge papers. For once, I let her carry everything without insisting I could manage with one hand. On the drive to her apartment, we passed the turn toward Lorraine's neighborhood. My body tightened automatically. Priya kept driving straight. My clothes are there, I said. Clothes can wait. My work laptop is upstairs. Your administrator can issue another one. The townhouse does not even have a finished bedroom. Then you do not sleep there tonight. Every answer separated need from emergency. I had spent years treating Lorraine's discomfort as urgent and my own safety as negotiable. Priya reversed that order without delivering a speech. At her apartment, she placed pillows behind me in a reclining chair and set water, medication, and my phone within reach. The room was smaller than Lorraine's dining area. Nothing matched. A stack of medical journals leaned against one wall, and a laundry basket occupied half the hallway. I had never felt less judged inside a home. I held the townhouse key in my palm before trying to sleep. Its brass edge had worn smooth from years on my key ring. Caleb always spoke of the townhouse as something waiting for the right moment. I finally understood that the right moment had become another place where he stored decisions he did not want to make. The house was unfinished, but it was mine. I did not have to complete every room before I was allowed to begin living differently. I slept for less than an hour because lying flat hurt. During that shallow sleep, I dreamed I was still sitting at Lorraine's table while everyone waited for me to correct a mistake I had not made. I woke with my right hand gripping the townhouse key and my left shoulder burning beneath the hospital sling. Nothing had been solved, but one fact felt permanent. I would never again enter that dining room as a woman asking permission to keep what belonged to her. At 6:47, my phone vibrated with an alert from the security application. Motion detected, front entrance. I opened the live view. Morning light lay gray across Lorraine's lawn. 2 police vehicles were parked at the curb. Detective Alina Ruiz stood on the front steps with another officer. Beside them waited a process server holding a sealed envelope. Inside the house, Caleb appeared in the hallway with his laptop open. Even through the camera microphone, I heard him tell Lorraine that his company password no longer worked. Lorraine pulled aside the curtain and saw the officers. The doorbell rang once, clear and ordinary, and Lorraine stepped backward as if the sound itself had entered without her permission first. For the first time since I had known her, she looked at her own front door and understood that being inside her house did not place her beyond anyone else's rules. The live camera did not let me hear every word through the closed front door, but it let me watch the shape of Lorraine's confidence collapse. She ordered Caleb to answer. He remained in the hallway, refreshing the company login as if enough attempts might restore the life he had possessed the night before. Detective Ruiz rang again. Caleb finally set down the laptop and opened the door. Lorraine stood several feet behind him, already dressed in the pale blue robe she wore when she wanted to appear fragile. She had combed her hair. Even at that hour, presentation remained her first defense. Ruiz identified herself and asked whether Lorraine Mercer was present. Caleb answered before his mother could. There was a family misunderstanding last night. The detective looked past him. I need Mrs. Mercer to speak for herself. Lorraine approached slowly. My daughter-in-law became aggressive over money. I protected myself. I am sure she has made it sound terrible. I sat upright in Priya's chair despite the pain. For years, Lorraine's version had become the family version because she told it first and repeated it longest. This time, a camera had heard the truth before she could improve it. Ruiz asked to enter. Lorraine hesitated, then stepped aside after the detective explained why the officers were there. The process server remained on the porch until the police had completed their immediate contact. Caleb's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and a message appeared on mine seconds later. Police are here. Call me now. Then another. You have made your point. I turned off message previews without replying. Priya emerged from her bedroom and found me watching the live feed. She carried 2 cups of tea and placed one where my right hand could reach it. Do you need to see this? She asked. I think I need to know what happens when I am not there to make it easier for them. Then watch, but breathe. Detective Ruiz asked Lorraine where the bat was. Lorraine pointed toward the dining room. The camera caught the detective entering its view, putting on gloves, and examining the maple bat where Lorraine had returned it to the wall. That detail wounded me in an unexpected way. After striking me, Lorraine had placed the bat back beneath Caleb's photograph, as if restoring an ornament could restore the story attached to it. Ruiz photographed the room, the table, and the distance between the doorway and the place where I fell. Another officer collected the bat. Lorraine objected. That belonged to my husband, she said. It had always been Caleb's bat when Lorraine told the sacrifice story. Now that it was evidence, it belonged to a dead man who could not contradict her. The camera microphone captured Ruiz asking whether Lorraine understood that the dining room had recorded the confrontation. Lorraine turned toward the camera. For a moment, she looked directly at me without knowing I was watching. Her expression moved from confusion to calculation. Those cameras invade my privacy, she said. I never consented to being recorded. Ruiz did not debate law with her in the dining room. We will document your concern. Right now, I am asking what happened. Lorraine said I had risen from the table and rushed toward her. Caleb stood near the doorway, pale and silent. When Ruiz asked whether he had seen me attack his mother, he said, "Everything happened fast." It was the same phrase he had used with me. Ruiz asked a narrower question. Did you see your wife touch your mother before the bat made contact? Caleb looked at the camera. I do not remember. I paused the live feed. He remembered. The video showed him tracking every movement, but denial did not always arrive as a false statement. Sometimes it arrived as carefully selected uncertainty. The process server delivered the documents after the officers finished their first interview. Caleb received notice that his access to Mercer Clinical Solutions had been suspended, that company devices and records had to be preserved, and that all further employment communication would come through counsel. Lorraine received the emergency protective paperwork and instructions concerning contact. Neither document was a verdict. Neither removed Lorraine from her house, but both broke the assumption that our conflict belonged exclusively to the family member with the loudest voice. At 7:19, Caleb called from a different number. I let it go to voicemail. Naomi, this has gone beyond what happened. Police took Dad's bat. A stranger handed Mom court papers on her own porch. You locked me out of the company before asking me one question. If you are trying to scare us, you have succeeded. Call me so we can stop this before people get hurt. I listened twice because the last sentence astonished me. People had already been hurt. He meant before consequences reached the people he considered vulnerable. Detective Ruiz called me shortly afterward. Her voice was precise and unhurried. We have collected the object and completed preliminary interviews. I need you to understand that an investigation takes time. The recording is significant, but we will preserve it properly, confirm the medical documentation, and allow everyone to provide a statement. Lorraine says I attacked her. She is entitled to provide her account. Evidence is how we evaluate accounts. The statement steadied me. Ruiz did not promise punishment or ask me to perform certainty. She asked if Lorraine or Caleb had contacted me despite the paperwork. I forwarded the messages and voicemail. Do not argue with them, she said. Preserve everything. If you feel unsafe, call immediately. Afterward, I opened my bank account again. The canceled instruction remained marked inactive. Lorraine's account still held the $6,000 transferred 4 days earlier. I had not taken it back. Her mortgage payment could still clear. Her utilities would remain on. The crisis at her door had not been created by deprivation. It had been created by the disappearance of guaranteed future access. At 8, Marcus sent a message asking whether we could speak securely. Priya connected my laptop to her monitor because I could not comfortably hold it. Marcus appeared on screen wearing yesterday's shirt. We preserved the logs, he said. Caleb attempted to sign in 6 times after suspension. Nothing got through. Have you found anything? Enough to continue looking, not enough to make accusations. He shared a summary. Several missing receipts corresponded with purchases from high-end retailers, fuel charges outside Caleb's business travel, and transfers labeled emergency vendor reimbursement. One payment had gone to a card account bearing Lorraine's name. The amount was $2,400. Could that be legitimate? I asked. Anything can have an explanation until we see the source documents. But Lorraine is not a company vendor, employee, or contractor. Who approved it? Caleb used an authorization level intended for urgent staffing operations, below the threshold requiring your second approval. I remembered designing that threshold. Hospitals sometimes needed rapid transport, lodging, or equipment for clinicians sent into emergency assignments. Delaying every expense for my signature could place people at risk. I had created flexibility, and Caleb had understood exactly where the oversight became lighter. Do not assume the worst yet, Marcus said. We follow records, not anger. I know. Do you? His tone was gentle. You were assaulted last night. You are allowed to be angry. I am reminding you that the review has to remain cleaner than the people we may be reviewing. I thanked him. His discipline protected the company and protected me from transforming justified suspicion into claims the evidence had not earned. By 9, Lorraine had begun calling relatives. The first message came from Caleb's Aunt Denise. I heard there was an accident. Lorraine is terrified. Please do not let outsiders destroy the family before everyone calms down. The second came from a cousin who had borrowed money from Lorraine, without knowing the money originated with me. You should be ashamed of sending police to an elderly woman's home. Then a member of Lorraine's church committee asked whether I wanted prayer and followed the question with a request that I withdraw. Whatever complaint had resulted from a private disagreement. Lorraine's story traveled faster than the facts because it required less explanation. In her version, I was a wealthy daughter-in-law who had humiliated a widow over shopping money, threatened to withdraw rent, lunged at her, and then weaponized my influence when Lorraine defended herself. The baseball bat became an object she happened to be holding. Caleb's silence became proof that both women had behaved badly. My injury became a bruise. The video became invasive surveillance edited by a vindictive businesswoman. My first instinct was to answer everyone. I drafted a message describing the strike, Caleb's inaction, and the recording. Before sending it, I showed Priya. "Is every recipient entitled to your medical history?" she asked. "No." "Will any of them investigate the finances?" "No." "Are you trying to correct facts or make people who already chose her believe you?" I deleted the draft. I sent one response to relatives who contacted me directly. I was safe. The matter involved documented violence, and I would cooperate with the appropriate authorities rather than litigate it through family messages. I asked them not to contact me on Lorraine's behalf. Some respected the request. Others treated the boundary as evidence of coldness. By afternoon, a hospital client called my office after seeing a vague social media post from one of Lorraine's friends about powerful women using police to punish mothers. My deputy director handled the call, but the possibility of family misconduct damaging the livelihoods of 83 employees frightened me more than neighborhood gossip. Marcus and my attorney joined a secure meeting. We agreed on a neutral internal notice. Caleb was on administrative suspension pending review. Operations would continue under my deputy. All records were preserved. No employee should speculate or communicate externally. "Do we mention the assault?" my deputy asked. "No," I said. "My medical information is not a company announcement." That decision cost me the emotional satisfaction of explaining myself. It also protected people who had not consented to become characters in my marriage. In the late afternoon, Detective Ruiz visited Priya's apartment. She reviewed the original recording on my device, confirmed where the camera was installed, and documented who had access to the account. Caleb had viewing permission, but could not delete cloud archives older than a few minutes without my administrator credentials. Lorraine had complained about the camera, but she had known it covered the common dining area for 2 years. Ruiz asked me to describe the argument without watching the video first. I did. She then played it and compared my memory to the recording. I had forgotten Lorraine's first half-step toward me. I had remembered Caleb farther away than he was. Trauma had distorted distance in a way that made his inaction seem almost physically excusable. The camera showed he had been close enough to reach Lorraine before the swing. "People sometimes remember the part they can survive," Ruiz said. "What happens now?" "We complete the investigation and send the evidence for charging review. The protective order has its own process. Do not build your recovery around predicting an outcome." That advice applied to more than the case. On the third day, Marcus came to Priya's apartment with a locked company laptop and a box of printed summaries. I was able to walk normally, but coughing and reaching still sent pain along my ribs. He arranged the papers so I could turn them with one hand. "The classifications were not random," he said. "They were designed to remain below secondary review thresholds." Over 14 months, Caleb had divided personal charges among hospitality, clinician travel, emergency transport, recruitment, and executive support. Some receipts were altered. Others were missing. The known total was already above $48,000, but Marcus warned that the number could move in either direction as legitimate expenses were separated from personal ones. "He knew the system," I said. "He helped build the workflow." That fact mattered. Caleb had often told people he had helped build my company. I had heard it as pride in our shared life. Now I saw another meaning. He considered familiarity a form of ownership. Marcus showed me an account ending in 4419. Payments from company cards had been routed toward it through reimbursements and supposed vendor credits. The primary holder was Caleb. Lorraine was an authorized user. The latest statement showed a minimum payment due the morning after the assault. Failure to pay would trigger a review because the account had exceeded its limit after cash advances and luxury purchases. The minimum due was $4,873. $5,000 would have covered it. I sat back carefully. The shopping trip was real. Lorraine had scheduled it with friends. But the urgent amount was not about dresses or embarrassment. She needed enough money to prevent the account from exposing what she and Caleb had already spent. "Can we prove where each dollar came from?" I asked. "Not yet. We can prove company money reached payments associated with this account. We can prove Caleb authorized transactions. We need full statements and supporting communications before describing Lorraine's knowledge." She knew the amount. "That is important. It is not the whole case." I appreciated him most when I wanted him to be less careful. The records changed my understanding of the dining room argument. Lorraine had not lost control merely because I refused a luxury. My no threatened to expose a shortage she and Caleb believed I would unknowingly repair. When I asked about Marcus's missing receipts, I moved closer to the truth than either expected. Her entitlement met panic, and violence became the quickest way she knew to restore obedience. That explanation did not excuse her. It made the sequence more believable and more devastating. Caleb had not been caught between two angry women. He had stood between the person asking questions and the person helping him suppress the answers. Rebecca called that evening. I nearly ignored the unfamiliar number. Then a message appeared. "This is Rebecca. I will not contact you again if you do not want me to. I heard what happened. Mom did something similar before without the bat. I saved the messages." I called her. Her face appeared on screen from a small kitchen with children's drawings taped to the refrigerator. She looked older than I remembered from the last Christmas dinner, but less guarded. "Are you safe?" she asked. The directness made me cry. She waited. "Yes," I said. "I should have listened to you." This is not a satisfying time to be right. She told me what happened after their father died. Lorraine had relied on both children emotionally, but she treated Caleb as loyal and Rebecca as difficult. When Rebecca became engaged, Lorraine demanded money for house repairs and called the wedding an abandonment. Rebecca paid several times. Each payment created another emergency. "The last demand was $12,000, Rebecca said. She said Dad had left a tax debt. I asked for the notice. She refused. Caleb told me to pay it and investigate later." Rebecca declined. Lorraine called relatives, claimed Rebecca's husband controlled her, and threatened to exclude her from family holidays. Caleb repeated that his sister was breaking their mother's heart. "I left because staying required me to be wrong about everything I saw," she said. She sent me screenshots. The language was painfully familiar. "After everything I sacrificed. You care more about your spouse than your mother. Family does not demand receipts. Do not humiliate me over money." One message came from Caleb. "Just pay her now. We can set boundaries afterward." The exact phrase he had used with me. "Why did you come to dinners at all?" I asked. "Because leaving a system does not make you stop loving everyone inside it." She had attended for Caleb, hoping he might eventually understand. Lorraine used those appearances as proof that no real harm had occurred. "Mom told me you thought I was jealous," Rebecca said. Shame tightened my throat. I believed her. "You believed the explanation that let your marriage stay intact. I did that for years too." Rebecca did not require me to punish myself before she offered help. She forwarded the original message exports to my attorney and Detective Ruiz, then asked whether I wanted her to speak with them. I said yes. Before ending the call, she said, "Do not let them turn me into the reason you leave. You already have your own reason." That night, I dreamed of Lorraine's dining table again. Every seat was occupied, but nobody had a face. Envelopes lay where plates should have been. Lorraine kept asking who had paid enough to eat. I woke before dawn with the key pressed into my palm. On the 5th day, Caleb requested contact through my attorney. He said he wanted to provide information about the accounts and discuss our marriage. The protective conditions did not prohibit controlled communication between us, but I was not obligated to accept it. My attorney proposed a video meeting with counsel present and recording agreed upon by everyone. I waited several hours before deciding. Part of me wanted to see him without Lorraine in the room. Another part wanted never to hear his voice again. Priya asked which choice would give me information I needed rather than pain I already possessed. I need to hear whether he can tell the truth when his mother is not beside him, I said. The meeting began at 2. Caleb sat in a lawyer's conference room wearing the gray sweater I had given him on our anniversary. His eyes were swollen. For one disorienting second, he looked like the man who had danced between folding desks. I am sorry, he said. My attorney reminded him that the meeting had conditions and that financial questions might carry separate legal implications. Caleb's lawyer advised him not to address specific transactions. Caleb nodded impatiently. I am not here about accounts, he said. I am here because my wife thinks I let my mother attack her. I do not think it, I said. I watched it. He closed his eyes. I froze. You stepped out of her way. I thought she was trying to scare you. She had a bat. She has never done anything like that. After she hit me, why didn't you call for help? I was trying to keep everyone calm. Why did you ask me not to call police? Because I knew one terrible minute could destroy all of us. You still believed the dangerous person was the one reporting what happened. He leaned toward the camera. You know what she is like. If I confronted her while she was holding the bat, she might have become more unstable. Then why did you leave me between you and her? He had no answer. Caleb said he had spent his childhood preventing Lorraine from falling apart. After his father died, she called him the man of the house, told him every bill she feared, and treated any independence as abandonment. He said I did not understand what it felt like to know one disagreement could make your mother stop speaking to you for weeks. I understand fear, I said. I do not understand why your fear had to be paid for with my body. His expression crumpled. I did not want her to hit you. Wanting is not what you did. He asked to come to Priya's apartment. I refused. He asked for a private conversation without attorneys. I refused again. Then he said, she pressured me into the expenses. Both attorneys interrupted. Caleb's lawyer advised him to stop, but the sentence remained between us. Which expenses? I asked. I cannot discuss that now. You brought it up because you wanted me to see you as her victim. I am trying to explain how trapped I was. A trap removes choices. You had choices every day. You chose not to tell me. You chose to use access I gave you. You chose to let her demand money. You chose to move aside. I made mistakes. A mistake is entering one number incorrectly. This required decisions. His lawyer ended the financial portion of the conversation. Caleb used the final minute to ask whether I still loved him. I told the truth. That is why this hurts. Then do not end us while you are angry. I am not making a final decision today. Relief crossed his face. But I am not coming back, I continued, and your mother's control does not erase yours. When the screen went dark, I shook hard enough that Priya had to help me steady the water glass. Speaking clearly had not made me unemotional. It had required me to remain inside the emotion without letting it negotiate on my behalf. The next financial discovery came from messages recovered through company device backups. Caleb had used a work phone to communicate with Lorraine about the card account. The conversations stretched back 11 months. Mom, the statement is higher than you promised. Caleb, I can move part through travel this week. Mom, Naomi watches everything. Caleb, not my department unless Marcus flags it. Later messages discussed cash advances and a losing investment Caleb believed would rebound. He had placed personal funds into speculative trades, lost them, then used company expenses to create breathing room while trying to recover. Lorraine let him use an account attached to her name because she believed Naomi would never examine her finances. 2 days before the assault, Caleb wrote, if she covers 5, we make minimum and I replace it after the next contract bonus. Lorraine answered, She will complain. She always pays. On the afternoon of the assault, Lorraine wrote, "I will handle her." Those 4 words carried more weight than the entire statement. Marcus's review eventually established that some questionable expenses were legitimate and badly documented. Others were personal. The confirmed unauthorized amount reached $76,400, excluding Caleb's separate investment losses. Of that total, payments benefiting Lorraine accounted for a smaller but substantial portion. The evidence distinguished her participation from his. She had not operated company systems. Caleb had. I wanted the truth to be simple enough that Lorraine controlled him and he obeyed. The records refused that comfort. He had initiated transactions, altered descriptions, split amounts, and reassured her when she worried. They had used each other. My attorney explained the options. The company could pursue restitution and cooperate with any applicable investigation. We also needed to review past financial statements, notify insurers where required, and strengthen controls. As owner, I had not committed the misconduct, but I remained responsible for correcting the vulnerabilities that allowed it. "I should have listened to Marcus," I said. "Yes," she replied. "That is a governance lesson. It is not consent to theft." The distinction mattered. Accountability did not require me to adopt blame that belonged elsewhere. The first family meeting occurred 3 weeks after the assault. Calling it a family meeting gave Lorraine more comfort than accuracy. It was a controlled exchange arranged through attorneys after several relatives insisted they could not understand the conflict without hearing everyone together. Detective Ruiz had completed the principal evidence collection, and the meeting was structured to avoid interference with the investigation. Lorraine and Caleb attended with counsel. Rebecca joined me. 2 of Lorraine's siblings and Aunt Denise participated as family witnesses rather than decision makers. The location was Lorraine's dining room. My attorney initially objected to my returning there. I chose it because Lorraine had built her authority around that table. Every Sunday, she occupied the head while the rest of us performed closeness according to her rules. I wanted to see whether the room still possessed power when I entered voluntarily and could leave at any moment. Priya drove me. My bruising had faded from purple to yellow, but the rib fracture still announced itself when I twisted. I carried no handbag beyond a thin folder. The townhouse key remained in my pocket. Lorraine had set the table with water glasses and flowers. No food was present. She wore dark gray and no jewelry except her wedding ring. The empty space beneath Caleb's framed team photograph was the first thing I noticed. Without the bat, the wall looked unfinished. Lorraine rose as I entered. "Naomi." She opened her arms slightly, offering the appearance of an embrace while remaining too far away to make contact. I sat beside Rebecca. Caleb occupied his old chair to Lorraine's right. He looked thinner. His company suspension had become termination after the initial records established serious policy violations and after he declined to participate fully without counsel. He watched me as if the arrangement of chairs might reveal whether our marriage could survive. Lorraine began before the attorneys finished reviewing the boundaries. "I want everyone to know that I regret the accident." Rebecca said, "It was not an accident." Lorraine did not look at her. "This is why family cannot heal. Some people arrive determined to attack rather than listen." My attorney placed a hand near my folder, reminding me that silence was available. I had spent enough years using silence only when it protected Lorraine. I chose my words carefully. "An accident is dropping something," I said. "You took the bat from the wall, blocked the hallway, demanded money, raised it, and swung. You advanced toward me. The recording shows otherwise." Denise shifted in her chair. "Is there really a recording of everything?" Lorraine answered, "An illegal recording in my private home." "A camera you knew about for 2 years," Rebecca said. Caleb spoke for the first time, arguing about the camera D.